is a beautiful day in Cleveland. Welcome to Sharing a Bowl with, presented by Superior Pho. I am your host, Chris Wynn, and today we'll be sharing a bowl with Jonathan Rodriguez, known by his friends as Jono. Jono, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome, man. You are an actor, a fitness trainer, community advocate, mentor to so many, and host of your own podcast. Wow.
Geez, you put it like that, you know? Makes you feel important. But no, man. I try to do as much as I can, and it's been a pleasure. It's been really cool.
Well, we're really excited to have you on the show. Why don't we get right into your acting? Because I think that's one of the biggest aspects of your life right now.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
exciting. Tell us about your plays and roles that you've been working on.
Yeah. So I've had the luxury, the privilege of being in 6 productions, and within the course of the last 2 years.
Wow.
Those 6 productions have been at some different theaters within the Cleveland area. I've been at Cleveland Public Theater. I've been at the Latin Us Theater Company, and I've also been at Karamu House, which is the first African American theater in the entire United States. Man, and at each theater, you really get to kind of tap into different communities, and you get to see just how impactful these theaters can really be for a community. So it's been one of my favorite things to do, man. I've wanted to be an actor since I was a kid, and so in the past couple years, I've decided to just kind of dive all in. Say
Yeah.
screw it, why not?
Okay, so pause. Wait. Karamu House is the oldest African American theater in the country, but you're ethnically what? What is your ethnicity?
So I am Puerto Rican and Dominican, so I identify as Latino. The Latin Us Theater that I perform at is the only Spanish-speaking theater, the only Spanish-speaking theater in the United States. So they only put on Spanish-speaking performances or Spanish-speaking plays, and then at Karamu, they put on so many different shows.
I was just gonna ask, how did you get into that one?
So no, it was awesome. I had the privilege of getting I had some people reach out to me. They asked me to come out to an audition, and I went and I ended up getting a role. And so
Was it an African American play?
so it wasn't an African American play, and they don't necessarily always focus on just African American plays or plays from that diaspora, but they often try to put on performances that are maybe speaking to certain things of the times, maybe controversial things, right? Like they really try to be they try to shine as much light as they can on issues, and so that sometimes means that they're going to put on performances with a lot of different types of community members or different types of ethnicities, different races. And so in the most current show that we did, it was a show called Clyde's, and it was about some people who are returning from prison, who catch themselves in an employment situation where their boss really understands that they have nowhere else to go. So their boss kind of takes advantage of that. And so each character in the show was of a different nationality or different ethnicity. So it was really cool. It was a very diverse show.
Wow, so that show probably resonated with you deeply.
Deeply.
And we'll touch on that in just a little bit.
Yes.
But tell us more about your other roles at Cleveland Public Theater.
And so a lot of the shows that I've done have all been kind of based on some type of culture or another. So I remember that the first mainstream full-scale production that I did was a show that was based on Brazilian folklore. It was called The River Bride. It was a really cool, fascinating story about dolphins that live in the Amazon River, and how there's a myth or a folklore in the Amazon about how dolphins will turn into humans and come to land and try to find a bride.
So was that play in Portuguese, Spanish, English,
So it
or
was in
echolocation?
Echolocation a little bit. We were out there. No, but it was in English, and I think it was originally written in Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. And I could be wrong on that, but I know that for sure we performed it in English. And it had some hints of Portuguese within it. Like there were certain things that we had to say that were in Portuguese, phrases, common phrases, stuff like that. But it was really cool, man. I just love that every show that I do has a very big cultural significance, right? We don't really just do shows. I haven't done any shows that haven't had that kind of really deep cultural aspect to it, you know, and so they've been really fun,
Wow.
really fun.
That's
My last two shows were all in Spanish too, so that was really challenging. I mean, although I speak Spanish and Spanish is
I
my
was
first.
just gonna ask.
Yeah, I speak Spanish. Spanish was my first language, but of course, you know, you begin to lose that a little bit as you kind of grow up in the United States. And I mean, I think you can attest to that too, right? Like you grow up learning one language, and then suddenly you're immersed in this culture that you can't really get away from. So even though I went in knowing Spanish, right, and I know Spanish very well, I'm very fluent. But man, memorizing an entire script
Oh my gosh.
in Spanish was very challenging because I've never been educated in Spanish, right? The
Right.
Spanish I do know, I learned from my parents, learned it in the household.
different.
It's different.
It's
Yeah,
totally different.
exactly. Totally different. So challenging, but it was so worth it, so fun, and crazy enough, it got me even better at Spanish, you know, because
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what? So what do you have coming up? What plays are you working?
So right now I'm in the middle of seeing if I could carve out some time to be in this production that's coming to Cleveland soon. It's going to be a Caribbean twist on Macbeth.
Oh.
It should be really awesome. And it was written by John Resto. Shout out to you, John. But he wrote this wonderful play with a Shakespearean play with this Caribbean twist, and it's gonna be really cool. So hopefully I can be a part of that project. But if not, there'll be other projects that I'll be looking into.
Okay, so you're still like trying out and
Yeah,
auditioning
still,
for that?
well, yeah. Some shows I don't necessarily have to audition for, which is really cool, because some people just know, they know about you. When your reputation precedes you a little bit, you don't always have to audition. But so I'm in this cool place where I'm starting to get those roles where people are just like, hey, if you want it, it's yours, And
That's
so,
awesome.
Yeah,
that's
so
amazing.
it's been amazing.
And how about film? Have you considered trying to take your acting to the next or
Yeah.
to that other level?
Absolutely, film is the next frontier. My ultimate dream really is to be involved with film. I have some projects of my own that I'm working on. I'm going to start writing here soon. My goal is to maybe start filming a project maybe this summer. I would love to really get those films into a film festival if I could, but that's the goal, right? I want to kind of get into directing a little bit, but film, just the overall world of film is something that I want to do next, and that's
Okay.
really what I ultimately want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about those projects or?
Well, right now they're in the making. I'm currently in the process. I'm in the middle of trying to write a script, a screenplay. I want to write a short film. Right now I'm between a few different ideas, but nothing set in stone that I'm ready to talk about. But
Okay.
hopefully you guys will see me directing and writing my own screenplays one day.
Yeah, no, you know what? That's really awesome, and I just want to share with the audience that I invited Jono because he's so multifaceted. Every time we have a conversation, it's amazing. You're always working on new projects, staying busy and crushing it in whatever field you
I appreciate
are
that,
in,
man.
and it's really cool. Recently, you started fitness training,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys can't see this because this is only being recorded. But Jono is kind of a monster of a man. He's like 6'2", almost 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
mo-
I was blessed with the genes, and I had the pleasure of playing some football and at a high level, and so of course those trainings and just kind of, when you have some of the best coaches in the world telling you what to do, that yields pretty sweet results. But man, now I get to finally kind of give back that knowledge, right? And
Right.
so in training, I've been able to do that a little bit,
And so you went to OSU, right?
Yes.
OSU alumnus, and I think I remember you telling me that you were a walk-on.
Yeah, so I walked onto the football team at Ohio State. I had scholarship offers to other schools, but a lot of those scholarship offers were coming from D2 programs. I was even, of course, getting highly recruited by a lot of D3 programs, and then I had a few D1 schools that were offering me stuff, but Ohio State was always the dream, and so I had a full ride academic scholarship to Ohio State. And so I made the decision that I was going to try my luck at Ohio State, see if I could make the team, because I knew that I knew that without football, I would still graduate, and so that was the main reason why I decided to go to Ohio State over those other schools, was because I was like, if I get hurt, if anything happens where I can't play football, I'll still have my scholarship to go to school, and I'll still be able to walk out of here with an education. So that was the reason that I went to Ohio State, or that I went with Ohio State. But when I walked on, I couldn't believe it. I had made the team. My childhood favorite team, my favorite college team growing up, was now a team that I was a part of, and so I played there for 2 years. Had an injury and some other things happened, and so that kind of derailed the football aspect of my career. But the things I took away from it, the friendships I made, were just second to none, man. You can't ever regret something like that, a ride like that,
Right.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. And actually, we met through our collegiate fraternity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we developed awesome friendships during our time in school. So now you're also fitness training and taking on new clients.
Yeah, taking on new clients. I really love it when people come to me with with motivation, right? People who really want to get this done. Of course, sometimes people don't have that, and that's why they look for trainers or coaches. But I just hope, I hope to work with some fine people. As of right now, I'm working with amazing folks. I have some clients right now that are really serious about their fitness journey. So when they're serious, it just makes it so much easier for me to show up and be the best me for them.
What kind of training are you doing? Like powerlifting?
So it really depends on the goals of the individual that I'm working with, right? My current clients, they're two young ladies. They both, they want to be those baddies on IG.
Okay.
They want to be those good-looking women on IG. That they joke about that, but they tell me all the time that that's their goal. But of course they want to get better. They want to get stronger. And they ultimately just want to get their fitness together now while they're young. Rather than waiting 15, 20 years and realizing that they missed their chance. So that was kind of their motivation.
Right, 100%. Do you want to share your information in case any of our listeners want to get in touch with you?
Absolutely, guys. If you want to get into this training with me, you can reach me at my Instagram, Don Jono. That's DonJono. Don Jono, and that's on Instagram, and that's probably the easiest way to reach me. I could throw my personal number out here, but I don't know what kind of cycles are listening.
Maybe not, right.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of cycles are listening to this podcast, so in the meantime, but you guys can reach me that way for sure.
I don't know why you're worried. Folks, I would not want to run into Jono in a dark alley at night.
I learned a long time ago that we live in a world where the weakest person could definitely take out the strongest person with these firearms, They're everywhere.
Right. Yeah. That's true too. Yeah, so you recently started your own podcast, and before we get into that, because I know that a lot of your own personal history is tied into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your more recent history. It hasn't always been a smooth ride.
No, it absolutely has not been.
You got into a little bit of trouble during college.
Big trouble.
So,
Big trouble.
You want to share with the audience about what happened and what led up to those moments?
Yeah. So there's no other way to put it. I thought I was El Chapo. Thought I was Pablo Escobar, man. I decided to start selling drugs on my college's campus. I decided to sell cocaine to some folks on my college campus, and through a series of a lot of different, so many different unfortunate events. But ultimately, I ended up getting caught. And that.
But we have to ask why, right? Because at that point, you had a full ride, bright student. You had the world ahead of you at that moment in time. What led up to that? Why?
Well, man, the honest truth is that I thought I could do it. I thought I could get away with it. I was a first generation college student. Going to school. I couldn't call my parents asking for any kind of money. I was there alone, and so although I had a full academic scholarship, I was living off campus. I had bills to pay. I'm paying rent now, all these other things. And the scholarship helped tremendously with those off-campus expenses. But ultimately, I didn't have money. I didn't really have people I could rely on to send me money. And so as I see all these other college kids selling whatever they wanted to sell, whether it be marijuana, whether it be other hardcore drugs, they were getting away with it. And I, stupidly and ignorantly thought that I could do it better than they could.
So why not sell marijuana?
If
they were getting away with it.
It's because I guess I wanted to do more, and so that's where my greed kind of definitely got in the way, because instead of selling something that was safe, I decided to start selling something that wasn't safe. And to be honest, of course, there was a lot of things involved, and I did sell marijuana at first, and I had an opportunity to then try to jump into the cocaine game. And I took it, because the money was incredible, and that's the trap. That's the trap with selling drugs, is that it is so easy. The money is easy, right? And the money comes quick, and it comes in big quantities, and then, it makes you want to do more. And that's actually one of the biggest reasons that I'm happy that I got caught, was because the road that I was going down, oh man, that money was so easy, and it was so abundant that I wasn't gonna stop. If they'd have let me, I'd have gone on and been the next big name in the cocaine world. But thank God I got caught, man, because it slowed me down. It stopped me from entering a world that, quite frankly, not a lot of people are ready for, because I was already getting glimpses of that kind of as I was in that world. But
like what, for example?
I mean, it's one of the shadiest drugs to just even find. And you know what I mean? Like, just finding people that are willing to sell that drug to you means that you have to, go into shady basements and, meet people behind shady establishments and go into neighborhoods you probably wouldn't just go in on your own accord, right? So much, like just the kinds of people that you're dealing with, right? See, the drug game is so dangerous because you can't just call the police and tell them that, hey, someone stole this from me, or someone owes me this, or right? You can't do that. So everyone in that world has to take things into their own hands, right? Like, if someone doesn't pay you, you've got to go get that money. If someone steals from you, you're either going to do something about it or you're not, right? There's so many different aspects of that world that become dangerous. Yeah. And I got a taste of it, man. I got a taste of it, and I thought I could hang. I thought I could hang. But the truth is, guys, that I'm a shitty drug dealer. All right, all right. Because if I was any better, I wouldn't be sitting here with these stories right now. I probably would have ended up, kind of going down the path that I don't. That now, looking back, retrospectively, I wouldn't have wanted to go down.
So are you like legally allowed to share details regarding that incident?
Yeah. My case is closed. All the convictions and everything have been handed down. So
no one's gonna come after.
No,
you
no one's gonna come
talking
after
about
me.
it?
Okay. Double jeopardy would apply if they came for me, because I've already been convicted for this. So yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. All right. Good. Wow. So you said you started in marijuana and then you transitioned to cocaine.
Yeah.
And it was driven by money, but how? Like, I can imagine, like, okay, you go to some shady dealer and he's got marijuana. I'm guessing that same dealer didn't also have cocaine. I don't know.
No, definitely not. Usually the guys dealing marijuana don't really, they're their own purpose and they want to be there, or they just haven't really had an opportunity to move up. And so, guys, the story for me was actually kind of crazy. I actually got set up by a classmate of mine. Had a classmate who apparently got into some trouble, right? He got into some trouble, and when you get into trouble with the police, they often tell you, well, hey, we'll lessen your sentence, or we won't punish you as bad if you just help us find more people, get more people in trouble, right? And so, that's when you have a decision to make, right? Am I going to become a confidential informant for the police, right? And maybe save myself, or am I going to, abide by the street code and not do anything or not tell on anyone, right? And I, unfortunately, my buddy was someone who not only said, I'm going to become that confidential informant, but I'm going to bag my buddies too, right? Like, anybody that's willing to do me a favor is going to go down with me. And so he was instrumental in kind of me getting into this entire mess. And that, so, but it is what it is, right? Like, ultimately I got caught up in something I wasn't supposed to be doing. And regardless of why I got in trouble or why I got caught up, I did get caught up, so, I had the unique experience of kind of it, the reason I got caught wasn't entirely my fault. It was a setup, but, I should have known, right? Like, those are the kinds of moments where, my gut was telling me my gut at that time was telling me that I should not deal with this individual, right? But I didn't listen to my gut. Instead, I listened to my greed, and I said, well, this is going to be an opportunity to make a lot of money, and you know, that's what you get for not listening to your gut sometimes.
And the moment that all of it went down, what happened that day leading up
Oh
to that
man,
moment?
it was a movie. I mean, quite literally, you know, the SWAT team, right, breaks every single window in the house. They throw all types of stun grenades into the house, right? Which at the time I didn't know the difference between a stun grenade and a real grenade because they sound exactly the same, right? So I'm in this house. The whole damn place is getting blown up, right? I don't know why. In the moment, I'm not thinking clearly. I'm like, well, what's going on here, right? I almost had a standoff with the police, right? Like, you know, in that moment. And so when it all went down, though, you know, and the cuffs are finally on me, you know, my head's against this concrete floor, and all I can think is just, I screwed up real bad. Like, I screwed up real bad. Like, things are gonna get really, really bad from here on out, and that's exactly what happened. I went, you know, I was fighting that case for about 2 years, and then at the end of those 2 years, they decided to sentence me, and that was the beginning of a long journey because that sentencing led to my prison time.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, you went to prison for selling cocaine.
Yeah, yes, I did, and that journey was that was really the start of something that changed the course of my life.
Yeah. Your most recent professional work deals with that aspect of your life a little bit, as well as your podcast.
Yeah,
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So you know, because of my experience in prison, when I came home, right, you know, I had a felony, and I didn't exactly know what to do with that felony, right? I had to get creative. And so I was blessed to kind of get an opportunity to work for an agency that helps people who are coming home from prison, returning citizens. You know, and in that work, I get to help people who have been through what I've been through. Never thought I'd have a desk job in downtown Ohio or downtown Cleveland. You know, so that was pretty cool. My college degree really helped with that job, but to think that I'm doing this kind of work, it's insane, but it's also very fulfilling.
Your college degree was
In world politics.
world politics.
Yeah, so I graduated with my degree in world politics, and of course I'm taking a picture with my family holding up my degree, and then not too long after that I'm holding up a very different sign, you know, in a very different photo.
Oh, boy.
You know, and we're talking about that mugshot. So, you know, that was kind of the journey, man. You know, I had, you know, it was like I was on top of a mountain, and then not too long after that, you know, that being on top of that mountain, I was really at the depths of a valley. And so my current work, you know, is very fulfilling because I get to help people who've been through what I've been through. And then my podcast, a lot of people don't realize it when they're listening, but the first 6 episodes of my podcast were filmed in a prison cell. They were filmed.
Get out.
Yeah, they were filmed from the prison cell.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that,
No.
really?
No. How did you make that work? Was
Yeah.
it because you started the podcast in prison, or because you went back and made arrangements?
No. So I started the podcast in prison. Me and my co-host, whose name is Caesar. Me and my co-host, you know, he made it happen. You know, he was like, bro, we have to document this. You know, we've been talking about doing this podcast forever, and right now is the perfect time. You know, he's like, you're incarcerated. And I'm just like, well, why? Why right now? You know, and he's like, because you're locked up. Like, you're in the belly of the beast.
Wow.
Like, who wouldn't want to hear that story? And so, and from prison, we recorded about 10 episodes of the Rant podcast, right? And Rant stands for the Real Ass Necessary Talks podcast.
Okay.
So that's what Rant stands for. But yeah, we started that, you know, while I was incarcerated. And so, of course, we didn't drop off 10 episodes, right? We had a lot of learning to do. Some of those episodes just didn't make the cut, but we did pick 6 of them that we thought would do it justice. And, you know, I was giving the unique perspective of someone who was, you know, incarcerated, right?
What was your routine? Shower, prison yard, podcast?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, more so a prison yard, shower, podcast, right? Like,
Wow.
and so yeah, we would podcast at night when things kind of calmed down. I was at the prison, and we had just gotten these tablets, right? Because they were giving every single prisoner tablets because the phone situation was getting real messy. It's always been messy, but basically in prisons, there's about 5 phones for about 300 inmates at a time, right? Now, you have a lot of inmates who want to speak to their wives, their girlfriends, right? Imagine those guys that think they're so badass that they just refuse to get off the phone, right? They're just going to sit there and keep calling their girl over and over and over again, but there's a line of 20, 30 guys behind him waiting to use the phone, but because no one has the gall to tell this man anything, he just keeps getting away with it. And on the opposite end of that, right, you have the guys who would use the phones and then get bullied off the phones and therefore never really got to call their people because they could never get on the phone. So that created a problem for the prison system, right? Because they were getting a lot of complaints from families, and so eventually they ended up going all in on a tablet system where every individual prisoner would have a tablet that was connected to a secure Wi-Fi that they had at the prison, and so then we can make phone calls from that tablet. So that tablet gave me the accessibility, right, to a phone in my own cell. And so then I was able to call and record a podcast from my cell. I was sitting in bed. I was sitting in my rack in a prison cell with my bunkie laying right above me, wondering what the hell I was doing and why I sounded like I was on a radio.
Speaking of which, I think I heard somewhere that your bunkie was actually a murderer.
Yeah.
How did you sleep next to a murderer every night?
Guys, that was the most scary part, was being locked in a place with people who were willing to do things that you may not be willing to do, right? People who were willing to go to extremes that maybe you weren't willing to go. And yeah, I had two bunkies actually that were convicted murderers. Both of them were serving life in prison. And I probably in total spent about 2 years spending my time in a prison cell with convicted murderers.
That's crazy. So these guys were nice guys, or what?
Well, I think both of them were older gentlemen, so I think they were just past their prime, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Right? Like they just knew that they couldn't always compete with these young guys these days, but nonetheless they were killers, and both of them told me straight out their own mouths why, when, where, how. And so I got those nitty-gritty details of murder, and one of those guys, the one specifically that I've highlighted the most because I have a whole episode dedicated to sleeping next to a murderer, but he had 8 bodies. He had 8 murders under his belt that he was willing to speak about, right? Like that he was willing to speak about because according to him, he's like, well, I don't want to tell you about something, and then I end up in a court somewhere.
Did you ever feel threatened?
I never felt threatened, but that's because I made sure that I was cool with them, right? I made sure that they knew that they didn't have anything other than an ally in me, right?
How do you do that? How do you build rapport with
with murderers?
Yeah,
right?
what?
I don't know, man. I turned on that charisma and that charm is on 1,000, and and I just made sure that they knew that they were safe with me, that that they were in a place where they could be themselves, where they felt welcomed. I tried to collaborate as much as I could, right? I didn't make any decisions in the cell without kind of asking, hey, is this cool with you? Do you care if I do this? Do you, hey, is it all right if I set this here or if I put this there? Sometimes I would have like food because these guys had both been incarcerated for 50 plus years.
Wow.
Right? 50 plus years of their lives they had spent in this prison cell. And so their relationship with the outside world, as you can imagine, was non-existent. They didn't have anyone out there that could actually help them. So here I am, I have support from the outside. I have people sending me food and things like that. So when I would make big meals and things like that, I always gave some to my bunkie, right? And it was kind of a peace offering, right? Like I didn't have to. And I wasn't scared of these men, to that degree where it's like, oh, I feel like I have to give you my food. No, it was more like hey, man, I cooked. Do you want a bowl? You want a bowl of what I got here? And, they would always be shocked that you were so kind, that I was so kind, and they always accepted, and we built relationships and we became friends, and so.
Did these men protect you, or was that not necessary? Or
it wasn't necessary, just due to the nature of my situation, and this is where we can kind of dive a little more into that prison culture, man. But my first day on the yard, the Latinos found me. There's no other way to say it, right?
Okay.
When you're incarcerated, and people kind of know that you are of them, right? If they know that you belong to a certain ethnic group, well, those ethnic groups really stick together in these prisons, right? You know, the African American guys, they stick to the African American guys, right? A lot of your, you know, there's a lot of those white supremacist groups in there that really stick together. There's, you know, your Latino organizations, and so there was an unspoken rule among these, you know, organized groups that, you know, no one touches anyone that is of our kind, right? So in a weird way, right, from day one, I had protection, right? Like to a degree, like everyone knew, hey, that guy's Latino. Don't mess with the Latinos.
Wow.
Right. So that helped a lot more than I realized in those early moments. But of course, I was just doing my own thing. I was never officially, you know, I didn't join these gangs, but just because I was Latino, right, the Latinos made it known no one on this compound touches Latinos.
So it's white, black, Latino. Are there any other ethnic?
Yeah, I mean, in some of the bigger prisons, you have Asian gangs. In some of the bigger prisons, you'll see, like, you know, African gangs, like gangs of guys that are, like, from the continent of Africa. It really is, you know, it just depends on the demographic of each prison.
And you're saying that African would be different than black. There's two different.
Yep, that definitely happened. Now, if there weren't, you know, if some of these African men, you know, from the continent didn't necessarily have an African gang or group to associate with, then yeah, sometimes they would definitely join up with some of the black guys, but it was fascinating to a degree, because if I'm being honest, I went in with the perspective of a scholar, right? I had just gotten my degree. I studied this at my university, like I was a political science major. You know, I studied sociology, I studied criminology, right? I had just finished maybe a 12, 13 page paper a year before being in this exact situation, on the situation I was in.
So would you say that you had a vague understanding or a deep understanding of prison culture going into it?
So I had a very deep understanding, and it had a lot to do with my family. I have a lot of aunts and uncles. I have about 22 aunts and uncles, and of those aunts and uncles, at least 15 of them have been incarcerated.
Incredible.
Yeah, and that's nothing to brag about, guys. That was, you know, but that prepared me, you know, because when I got caught up in my stuff, I immediately went to those family members to ask questions about the prisons, to kind of get the 211, or what is it, the 411, right?
Yeah, 411.
Yeah, the 411 on what these things were, and so they helped.
Could be the 811 where they check your yard for
right,
gas lines.
For gas lines, yeah, exactly. It could be, you know, but I needed information,
right?
So yeah, I went to those family members that were there before I was, and you know, that's where I got my game. You know, so I went in there with a little bit of preparation. And don't get me wrong, before I was incarcerated, because I knew I was going to be incarcerated, that was like a very unique place to be in, right? Knowing that you're going to have to do prison time, because Ohio has minimum sentencing laws for people who get caught up with certain amounts of drugs, and so I had gone over that amount, so I knew that I had 3 years minimum that I had to do. And guys, that was honestly one of the biggest things, because you have that floating over your head. And so, of course, I'm thinking of everything possible. Should I run, right? Should I just go on the run? Should I move to another country, right, and try to avoid this entirely? But then I thought, man, but if they only give me 3 years, then after 3 years of being somewhere else, I could have been home. I could have came back, you know. And so it was just one of the most overwhelming moments of my life, because I still had this long journey ahead of me. And that's kind of what day one was like. You know, a lot of people talk about what was prison like, but the hardest moment in prison was that first day. You know what I mean? After you just get sentenced, the judge throws the book at you. They tell you you know, in my case, they told me you have 3 years to do. That's 1,095 days that I had to go do somewhere else, right? I had to literally pick my things up. They plucked me out of my life. And just like just like one of those claws and those game machines that you see at the, you know, that
dropped you down a
hole. Dropped me down a hole into a place that I never thought I'd be, man. Because
right. And then you were snuggled by some stranger.
Yeah, and then you know you got Big Bubba over here. No, but man, it was that was the worst day, was that first day, because I'm sitting there. And I can't believe that I'm not going home for 3 years, right? Like, you know, because right after they sentence you, it's like, all right, bailiff, cuff them up. Let's go. It starts right now. Yeah. You know, I waved goodbye to my family and my fiance and everyone at the time, and they take me to this back room, and that's the beginning.
Well, I remember too, man, you know, because we know each other outside of Superior Pho, and I just remember that that day, or I think it's that weekend where there was
Yeah.
like a final gathering before
Yep.
before you went away, and I think that was just a very dark page in all of our minds and all of our hearts,
Yeah.
where you know, we knew that you would be coming back, but there was definitely a sense of mourning your absence,
Yeah.
and you know, it was a really dark time for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you know, Jono, you're you know, I don't think I've ever shared this with you before, but in so many of our lives, you are such a bright light, and always so full of warmth and laughter and insight, you know, with your own experiences. And yeah, and when you went away, you know, even though at that point we'd only known each other for a few years at that point,
Yeah.
but even still, it was just, you know, and just feeling the sadness around. But now that you're out, you know, and you're doing so many amazing things with your life, like, I just want to say that we're all very, very proud of how far you've come in spite of your, you know, challenges. But you're crushing it, man. You're killing it.
No, man, and that means so much to me, especially coming from you. You know, Chris, you're one of the people I've looked up to the most. You know what I mean? You were very instrumental in a lot of the things that I was doing in those early college years. You know, I don't know, you know, for those that don't know, Chris was willing to take me under his wing and teach me about stocks, you know, economics, financial literacy. Those were things that you know, took the time to teach me. And so, you know, you were very instrumental in my life, and you were someone that I thought of often when I was away because, you know, you were doing all the things I wish I could be doing, right? And so, you know, as much as you said earlier that, you know, I guess I influenced you, but just say I need you to know that you also influenced me in a lot of ways, man. And so I always appreciate, you know, you being there, you know, and you being in my corner and having access to you. You know what I'm saying? Because that's something that people take for granted sometimes, just having access to certain people.
For sure.
You know, so thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I really do.
Of course. Now let's get into the moment everyone's been waiting for. Let's talk about how you take your pho and your pho journey.
Let me just start by saying that I love pho. Vietnamese cuisine has hands down become probably one of my like top favorite just types of cuisine, and I mean I absolutely adore it. But the way that I like my pho is, well, first I like the eye round steak, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I like, you know, the simple pho thai is my favorite.
The rare,
you know, eye round steak in the bowl, and you know, with extra noodles. I like extra noodles. And guys, there's a process to this. There's a method that means a lot to me. But
indulge us, please.
Oh, I got you, man. I've been waiting for this all day. So the first thing I do, guys, is I'm gonna taste that broth with nothing in it. All right, I don't need to mix it with anything.
See, that's the way it's meant to be done.
You know what I mean? You got to appreciate that first, man. So I'll always take a nice little gulp of that broth, and I'll just let that warmness just go down
there you go,
my esophagus. I hope I'm using the right the right terminology, but man, I always start off like that, and then once I know what the chef intended me to taste, all right, that's when I go ham with my sriracha and my hoisin.
Okay.
You know, that's when I go hard with those condiments and I start kind of going to taste. But man, you know, I definitely enjoy adding those flavors. My lime, you know, I like to throw my lime in there, like to throw my veggies in there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I just go in, guys. To me, a bowl of pho is like the equivalent of a bowl of life.
A bowl of life.
A bowl of life. I'm not even kidding. I tell everyone that because I've introduced so many people to pho since Chris, because Chris was actually the first person that introduced me to pho.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And I don't know if he knows this, but I was in college. I'm this young college kid, right? You know, when I was pledging my fraternity, I'd have to call some older brothers. And so I called Chris, and so Chris was amazing. And he tells me he owns this restaurant. So I go back to Cleveland. He's like, come to my restaurant. So I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to his restaurant. So I go to the restaurant. Chris sits me down, and he takes me through the whole process of how to properly eat pho. And I have passed that on 100 times over, man. I have brought so many people to his restaurant specifically, but you know,
have you tried other? I hope you've at least tried other places.
Oh,
too.
I've tried other places, but I always come back to Superior Pho.
Okay, I'm flattered.
No, I love his restaurant, but yeah, you taught me how to eat pho, man, and so when I tell you I've done the good work to pass that on and make sure people know that, hey, this is one of the best cuisines you can get.
Well, thank you, sir.
So, and I'm not even just saying that because I'm on this podcast, guys. I mean, honestly, I could be on a whole other podcast talking about food and pho would come up.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jono. So without further ado, we actually have a surprise for you. We have a number 2 with Iron.
Ooh, and it's warm. Oh. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So we're going to get right into it, guys. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Sharing a Bowl with, presented by Superior Pho. I am your host, Chris Wynn. You can catch us on Instagram, YouTube, and tune in to us on most of your favorite, if not all of your favorite podcasting mediums, Spotify, and a bunch of other ones. So thank you guys for joining us today, and until next time.
Thank you. Until next time.